That's a stack of kids, my friend.
4 in the litter. How are you holding up? This is only like a few weeks ago, right?
It's good, man. I love having kids. Kids are the best. I think parents like to complain about having kids, but like
I do.
what the it's like there's this Jordan Peterson quote,
it's a solid excuse for anything.
Kids, like, what the fuck would you be doing? Like, that's so special. Like, most of us are.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm gonna be inventing, a new like equation for quantum field theory or something. Like, I'm not doing any of that. So like,
string theory is just a bit above our heads as well,
Right, exactly. So hanging out with the kids and playing Uno or goofing around is like, that's where I'm at. That's my zone.
Right. The other thing that I think of, my kids just went back to school, so now I have like full days with nothing to do but what I want to do, and you start to realize, like, what do people without kids in their 30s and 40s do? There's just
Exactly.
Yeah.
You basically just get drunk in different locations. You're like, I went to Dublin and I got drunk, and then I went to Istanbul and I got drunk, and then I went to Rio de Janeiro and I got drunk, and you're like, okay, I can get drunk here. I got beer here,
Yeah, people end up, and I don't want to shit in the mouth of non-parents here right off the bat, but fuck it, let's do it. Everybody should have kids. It's well worth it. And I think, at least based on my circle, most people I see that don't end up having children really, really wish they did. They get into their late 30s, 40s, and 50s, and they realize, oh, I see what this whole thing's about. Highly recommend it. Get out there. Fuck everybody. Start fucking. Start reproducing. Let's expand the species. Let's get more Bitcoiners.
If you don't have kids, I consider you weak hands, because there's no one going to hodl after you're dead. So what, you only got like max, 40, 50 years of hodling there. All right. Like, we need to extend that out. 7 generation thinking, like my boy Marty Bent says,
Hey, by the way, your connection is horrendous on my end.
Right?
How's it holding up on your guys' end? I just want to say this before we get this too far into the.
I'm seeing nothing but like 5 seconds ago right now. Hodl.
Wait, so Hodl, what's your internet situation? Where the fuck are you, dude? Are you off the? You off the map?
There's just something. They must be doing fucking service in the area or something.
Christ.
Dude, the thing that's strange. The thing that's strange is that it says you're at 99% uploaded right now, so you should be.
I got to do this from like the stairs, I think, for some reason.
It's gonna be even better.
That's how we talked to Harry Sudak right from his phone the whole time. It worked out well.
Yeah, much better connection, dude.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
I'm not there's no like mic or anything, but this is better.
It's all good.
Yeah,
okay,
we've got some tricks we can use to make you sound great.
We got some AI tricks that'll make you sound like the voice of God.
I don't know why this is the spot I'm getting Wi-Fi, but whatever. Anyway.
Wait, so you're sitting on the stairs right now? I see the banister behind you.
Yes, sir.
When you were gone, what we were saying, we were talking shit about you, obviously, while you were gone. And we were saying, I listened to you with your most recent chat with Peter, and Peter was spending some time saying, like, I love smart hodl. I like the glasses. I like the refined, civilized hodl. And Josh and I were like, fuck that shit. We want total douchebag, degenerate hodl. If you don't deliver that today, you fucked up, because we need you fully unleashed, my friend.
All right, I'll do my best. Let's see what I got. Firehouse humor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think you'd fit right into the firehouse based on some of the stuff I've heard you spew over the years. I think you'd fit right in, especially coffee hour, 8 o'clock in the morning. Just a bunch of degenerates.
I don't know if you guys have seen the new Shane Gillis stand up on Netflix, but that's like my barometer for humor, just like extremely immature playground humor, the way we used to talk to each other, when
toilet humor,
the 3rd grade. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's sort of litmus test for like how far you can go culturally. You're like, oh, we weren't allowed to say that 10 years ago. He just went that far in that Netflix special. I guess that's the tip of the spear for how far we can go. Chappelle broke some boundaries. A lot of people have broken boundaries on Netflix in the last
but comedy in general has been regressive over the last 10 or 15 years. Like so many things have been taboo to say, especially for comedians, which really ruins comedians. And only like Dave Chappelle can get away with it and a few others. But comedy has really been shit on in the last 10 years, I think.
The left went too far and they canceled basically too many people. And you can't cancel everybody, because then now you just have like half the country that's canceled, right? And so, all the canceled people, it's not like you killed them. Like, they're still alive, and they're just like, you know what? I don't give a shit about being canceled. And that's like where everybody's at nowadays. And so I am starting to see, like, I think the, cancel culture has peaked, and now we're on the other side of cancel culture. And there's a bunch of people who basically have realized, like, if you don't cancel yourself, nobody can really cancel you. You just choose not to give a shit about it. I think it was actually Trump that taught everybody that maneuver, right? Which is like, whatever, I don't care, whatever you say about me, I don't give a fuck, whatever. And he's just gonna keep going out there and calling you Stormy Horseface Daniels or Pocahontas or whatever. He doesn't give a shit. And you could be like, you were the worst president ever. He'd be like, that's false. I was the best president of all time. So you just don't let any of it get in there. You just go, no.
He broke a ton of clown barriers. Trump did.
He's a clown innovator. The way he could do that. Yeah. I mean, if that guy had one characteristic that I admire, it's his ability to spin move out of any accusation by calling the other person an ingenious nickname that stuck. Like, just nailed it every single time.
My favorite nickname ever, I think, was Low Energy Jeb, because who comes up with Low Energy Jeb? And then you would look at him and you would be like, man, he is really low energy. What the fuck?
These things work.
Get this guy a cup of coffee,
Shortcut narratives are really effective.
Speaking of presidents, you guys see Biden the other day, and it was yesterday in Vietnam. He literally got hooked off the stage because he started mumbling nonsense about something that was far off of what they were talking about. Oh, yeah. They turned his mic off while he was talking, and he kept talking. And then they had an announcer get on and basically say, "Oh, you're done here, Mr. President." They got the hook out and they pulled him off stage. It was watch this clip. Yeah, it was insane. The Shepherd's Crook came out. It was full blown like, all right, get this fucking guy out of here before he makes us look even dumber. Unbelievable.
In a nation of 360 some odd million Americans, and I think many of us are very intelligent, the last two presidents have been kind of, not up to snuff, right? Like, where are our good people? We're not sending our best anymore, unfortunately.
It is comical, but it's also downright embarrassing because, and I've heard enough out of you to know that you'll agree with this. I'm still very proud to be an American. I think there's a lot of wonderful things that this country stands for and imbues and has done. And it's a downhill slope right now on both sides. And I just laugh at, obviously, like most Bitcoiners, Josh and I are aligned on this. Both sides are in full frontal clown mode. And anybody that's latching on to either candidate at this point, I almost lose respect for. It's like, how can you take either of these guys seriously? But we need to dig out of that. Like that needs to be fixed, to your point. That's not something that's healthy for the average American citizen to just be resigned to the fact that the leader of the entire nation is a complete idiot. We need to dig out of that and hopefully reverse that trend.
Well, in general, I lean conservative usually, but I actually have been, found myself very intrigued by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because he's a Bitcoiner, but I think he really has the American ethos down pat, and he's bringing back like civil discourse into the Overton window, right? Like by basically being like, why am I not? I'm a Democrat my whole life. My father was, a senator, a presidential candidate. My uncle was killed. He was one of the most popular Democratic presidents of all time. Why am I not allowed to say this? Why am I not allowed to have opinions or questions? And in America, I feel like anytime we lose our foundational principle, which is, free speech, anytime we're losing that, we're losing our soul as a country, because you should be able to say almost anything you want without significant repercussion. Sure. Yeah. That's just how things are. Like, obviously, if you say something that's very racist or hateful or homicidal or genocidal or something, then people are going to have a lot of feelings about it. But there's very little speech that's actually illegal speech, right? And we should be able to, just get together in a room and discuss things as Americans. That's a very rare thing. Like that's not something that you find in almost any other culture on earth. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Peter McCormick about this, but like the British sarcastic, dry humor that they're all known for, that is because they don't have free speech. So they have to be sarcastic.
That's never occurred to me before that either.
Right. They have a shield to hide behind, and they can be like, oh, come on, mate, I was just taking the piss. Whereas we as Americans can just say what the fuck we actually think, which is a more effective system.
Yeah, they have to I'm
show
glad it
side
happened
boob. Because I love the British humor.
Yeah, they have to show side boob. They can't go full frontal. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I'm sure you guys will both agree with this point as well. So we've got these clown puppet leaders that we're just accosted with every 4 years and have to deal with the shit sandwich or the giant douche, and we've got to pick between the two of them. But then there's also like every time there's like, I mean, I'd say most times there's a new law, some new bullshit with COVID that happened in the last couple of years. I'm stunned by the stupidity and heavy-handedness of which a lot of this stuff comes down. And it's like I'm disappointed by how bad these takes can be and how bad these rule changes are and how overbearing a lot of this has been, especially in the last few years. But it seems like every time a new law is instantiated, it's just feels wrong on its face. And I feel like people are so numbed to it at this point that they just expect it to be the wrong thing instead of what we would prefer to have, or I think people from our circles would prefer to have at least. What are your thoughts on that? About how there's just like this numbness about how these people operate?
Well, we're recording this on 9/11, and one of the reasons I wanted to record with you guys because you're both firefighters, and I think we're all around the same age. 9/11 was the seminal moment of our young lives, and obviously, like, it certainly had an effect on both of you, I'm sure, and I'd love to hear your stories about that. But to me, I have a great memory. It's a gift and a curse. And one of the things that I remember is the world pre 9/11. I remember what it was like. And we're now living in an entirely different world that's not better. It's a worse world. We have a heightened security state, a heightened surveillance state. I mean, you used to be able to just, what has TSA really accomplished? Like, did they prevent any new atrocities? I don't think they did, because
I don't think so.
One guy tried to, bomb a plane with his shoes. And now we all got to take I got to take off my fucking Van slip-ons every time. You know what I mean?
And your belt.
Annoying, dude.
Crying shame.
Yeah.
Fucking shoe bomber.
I mean, it is like, we appreciate you bringing that up. It is in the fire service. It's the day of the year. And it's been said for a couple decades now, never forget. But I feel like the fire service, Josh, has done a pretty good job of not forgetting. Like, you still see it on a lot of fire trucks. Every single firehouse around the country is honoring it today. There's a moment of silence that comes over dispatch. There's events that happen every year. And I don't know. This is just a complete sidebar on 9/11, but it was fucking insane. Insane. I was in 6th grade. I remember where I was, as everyone does. And wasn't fully able to appreciate the magnitude, but as the years have gone, watching back at the documentaries and thinking through just like from our vantage point, Josh, we've talked about this before with our career. Like, there is a degree of submission to risk. Doesn't happen very often. We don't want to overplay the hero card here. And the vast majority of our job, we're paramedics. We rotate ambulance to fire truck. But when this shit happens, it's real. And you've kind of sworn an oath to not have a choice, but to go into that. If that happens in your career, that 2nd-story bedroom, to risk your life for a kid or whatever, all those men and women that went into that building, obviously hindsight's 2020, but if we worked in New York at that time and had the badge on, we would have done the exact same thing. So the heroism that existed, but I agree, like to get back off the 9/11 is just like, how has the world improved in any way, shape, or form since then? And it has not. In many ways, it's devolved in the opposite direction, and we need new currents that flow the opposite way that get us back to a lot of American ideals, which is part of what we've latched onto the most about what you've said and spoken into this community.
Totally.
Yeah. We see, so the Patriot Act was instantiated right afterwards, which took away it added surveillance, took away a whole bunch of fundamental rights. And it was supposed to be sunsetted. I don't remember if it was 5 or 10 years after 9/11, but they extended it, and they've continued to extend it since then. It's again, back to what we were just talking about. Like, it's almost like a peg in. They get a foothold in, and the politicians never relinquish any power whatsoever. It's always another step up, another squeezing of the populace.
They peg a shit coin into American ideals, kind of like potentially pegging shit coins into Bitcoin with Drivechains. I don't know. Maybe we'll get into that today.
Smooth transition there, Dave. Have you thought about mining Bitcoin, but you thought that maybe the equipment was too expensive, or that running your own miner might be just a bit too technical? Maybe you thought it'd be cool, but the cost of energy where you live just makes it pointless. This is where HeatBit comes in. You can kill 3 birds with 1 stone with this device. It's a Bitcoin miner, a heater, and an air purifier all in one. It's a plug-and-play device that could not be easier to operate. It has the latest 5nm chips that make it one of the most efficient Bitcoin miners in the world. HeatBit also operates quietly. Good luck selling the idea to your wife that you're going to plug in a bunch of Bitcoin miners in your basement that operate at the volume of a lawnmower. Not going to happen. HeatBit operates silently while keeping your significant other warm and cozy. HeatBit cares about your marriage. So, if you want to mine Bitcoin and remain married, order a HeatBit and keep warm while it pays for its own energy bill. Use code BCB to receive 5% off a HeatBit. That's code BCB.
I can't think of a worse way to honor all of the brave guys, who ran into the towers when they were on fire than what we've done in the aftermath of 9/11. I just can't think of a worse world. I saw an Instagram post that actually made me pretty emotional. It was a, young, pretty girl. She's probably in her like late 20s now. And she went to visit the memorial because her father was FDNY and he ran into the building. He ran into Tower 2 and he, collapsed on him. And she grew up her whole life without her father, right? And he made the ultimate sacrifice. And that's something that you guys have to, that's an interesting conversation actually, like around risk. Like as firefighters and investors, how comfortable you guys are with risk, or how do you manage risk, or how do you think about risk? Because this is something that I actually think about quite often is risk is ever present. There's sort of this lie that like, if you're a firefighter, like every day you got to think about like, okay, yeah, a lot of it is, paramedic stuff, right? But there's that day, and that day might come for you.
Yeah.
And you got to run into the fucking building, right? When everybody else is running out. That's a crazy high level of risk. I mean, you're gambling with your life at that point, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think if you're working a normal, 9-to-5 job where you just go in every day and you make the coffee and whatever, you can forget that risk is ever present in your life, and you can think things are sort of static, but nothing is static. Everything is in sort of constant turmoil and chaos nonstop. And that's the underlying reality of life. And you can either choose to like delude yourself and ignore that fact, or you can choose to, sort of go towards it and be comfortable with it. And, I for you guys is like guys who, deal with this, it's always in the back of your mind, I'm sure. I would love to hear like how you process that and how you think about it in terms of like, your other endeavors in life.
It's a good question.
I think there's a saying in the fire service, and I'm sure this is in other circles as well, but it's risk a lot to save a lot. If we know that there's people in that building, we're going in right away. Whether or not it's deemed, safe to go in, we're going to go in and try to find the kid or the person or whatever. But I also think in normal life, most normal jobs, like I think part of the problem we have with mental illness in the world is that nobody takes risks anymore at all. Like people live these comfortable, meandering lives where they don't have to put them, not that people should be putting themselves in massive peril, anything like that, but that's how we evolved. We evolved to expect, a tiger in the grass or something to upset us. And so like, if we're just living these mediocre, middling lives with no mountains to climb, I think that's why we see so much mental illness in the modern world. We just have it too easy in some respects.
This is back to the kid conversation is like, do you know how much fucking war and famine and pestilence and disease and rape and murder and slavery that every single person, okay, all of our ancestors had to go through for you to be here right now?
We got to bring it back.
This is like a sacred gift that you've been given, right? And the best thing that you can think to do with this sacred gift is to like get high and play Xbox.
Yeah.
It's kind of pathetic. Of course, that's going to make you feel pathetic. You're ending a long line of savage warrior survivors so that you can be a fuck-ass, nobody, pissant little baby crying in a puddle of your own fucking tears.
Cucking down in your mom's basement.
Sad. Your life is sad. You should be sad.
Yeah, Josh, as you just said, in your mom's basement. The sheer number of fucking people that get a 3 in the first digit of their age, late 20s into their 30s, that are still living with mommy and daddy. I actually have a thread in the works that I'm going to sling. I'm going to hold myself accountable now about why I am not a fan of people living at home. I could go on this for a long time. There are exceptions. If you're working towards something very specific, if something super unforeseen and unfortunate happens, but generally speaking, it misaligns incentives for young people. It misconstrues the reality about their cash flow. Like you'll have these young dudes, and we've seen that at the firehouse too. We won't say names, but they live at home we make a fine amount of money, plenty to provide for yourself. They will live at home saying, oh, I'm saving more money. But in reality, they're driving cars they shouldn't. They're taking vacations they wouldn't. And so then when reality hits and they need to buy that house and they need to raise that family, they're like, oh, fuck, I used to like to do all X, Y, and Z. Well, you can't anymore because your math is off, and the safety that you have between your spending and your income evaporates. I digress.
No,
I wanted
totally.
to follow up with a couple of comments based on your question about like how our job affects how we see the world and maybe even into investing. I think the thing that I have, Josh, grown to appreciate the most, and I'm only in year 7, so I'm still cresting up in my career here, but I really appreciate, Hodl, how much of an awareness it gives me, and I think us, of the human condition and the fragility of being a Homo sapien. Because of what we do medically as paramedics, and also personally, the risks that you potentially take on personally, it just gives you an appreciation for me. This morning, I was out hitting tennis balls and I was thinking, oh my God, I literally had this thought. I was sitting out by myself like a fucking loser hitting against the wall, but there were some nice trees around. I'm like, I'm 33 years old. I'm fucking healthy. I don't have any comorbidities or illnesses. I'm able to take deep breaths and exhale. All my joints work. Like, these are things that we're thinking in our 20s and 30s that a lot of other people are thinking when they turn 50 and start to encounter issues. So I just think there's a beauty and a help. There are downsides to what we do. We see some crazy weird shit that can fuck us up, but it gives us this sort of holistic appreciation for how scarce and short life is, and appreciating that in the moment. At least it does for me. I don't know if you'd agree with. I think you would, Josh. We've talked some about it.
No, I mean, especially when you see younger people in their 30s and 40s dropping dead or having serious issues or being, morbidly obese. There's so many afflictions, problems, and issues, and again, back to the mental illness. We see, I would say and I've been doing this for 12 years, over the course of that career, I think this mental illness thing has increased like an order of magnitude since I started. It has been, and it's again back to what we spoke about, whereas people don't have like a goal they're driving towards. They just kind of aimlessly wander in their parents' basement playing Xbox or whatever it is.
Jerking off 7 times a day. Yeah.
I mean, if you can achieve that goal, that is astounding. That's something to strive for.
I've noticed this too, and I noticed this a lot, especially during 2020, was it seemed that both sides politically had weaponized the mentally ill on their side against the mentally ill on the other side. And we, normal people, were all paying the fucking price for this because it was just chaos in the streets. Like, for the entire summer of 2020, it was a bunch of riots. I mean, they were calling them peaceful protests, but they were anything but. They were fucking riots. And Chicago got hit the hardest. I saw a picture of a girl riding a police horse in Chicago. Did you see that
Chicago
picture?
was fucking bananas. There's a couple of cops.
Picture.
There's a couple of cops
riding a police horse, man. What the fuck?
Those cops were in full survival mode. Like, they were flipping over their cars. They were like, holy fuck. Like, I'm by myself, surrounded by 1,000 crazy people. Like, I'm just got to take off this uniform and run.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you though. I think like, the people say diseases of despair, and it's very prevalent in like rural areas, with like opioid addiction and all this kind of stuff. And I think that, a lot of the mental health crisis is also diseases of despair, or people have called it the meaning crisis. People have no meaning in their life. I mean, like, as hard as your job is, at least you guys have fucking meaning. Like, people need you. The community really needs you. Most people's jobs are not needed. They're just kind of fuck ass nothing jobs. Like, you see these videos where the girl is on TikTok and she's like, "This is a day as a senior VP at Meta. Okay, I'm gonna get some matcha, and then they let me bring in my Labradoodle. I took an Uber to work, and then I worked for 12 minutes, and now I'm gonna do some Pilates just to de-stress." Right? That's not a real job. That's fake. It's nothing. Firefighter, real job. That job, not real job.
Yeah. I used to work for a financial company before firefighting, and I was there for like 6 years. Saw cubicle farms every day. Sat in a cubicle farm. Realized extremely quickly that, like, I can't do this. If I do this for another 5 years, I'm going to fucking kill myself.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I feel bad for people. I mean, there's a shitload of people stuck in the cubicle situation. And if you're listening right now and you are, like, go be a firefighter. I'm telling you, it's way better. Do something. It's almost like, it reminds me of Office Space. And that movie's always cracked me up, because if you've worked in an office, Office Space is just it. And then, towards the end of the movie, when he gets his job working as a laborer and he loves it, I get that. Like, you get, there's something about, we need to activate every part of ourselves, not just our mentally. You have to go out there and activate your body physically, or you're going to degenerate there. And it's all intertwined. Your physical and mental health, they're intertwined completely.
when I first decided to do this job, so Josh and I came from different careers, which is really common for career firefighting. I managed a golf course. I was a Class A PGA member. I taught golf lessons and managed a golf facility. Still have fond memories, but just realized it wasn't for me. And I remember Josh and I both, our favorite thing to do is read and learn. I'm very cerebral and I just love ideas. And so this career, for my immediate family at least, was like the last fucking thing they ever expected I was going to do. And I remember asking my dad, who I trust a ton, I'm like, dude, knowing everything you know about what I've explained and the journey and everything, do you think this would be a good fit for me? And he said, I don't think this is the best fit for your skill set. But if your passions are there and you think it's what you want to do with your life, you should do it. And I think that's spot fucking on. I love the two sides of my life. I love the tactile, clock in, clock out, occasional high intensity, but then it's over. And then there's this other part. And that's what the podcast brings out for us, for example, is like, totally. This is the other side that we enjoy. And I don't know, but you got to have multiple things going on in your life. Because if you just do one thing exclusively, right? You know, if you're a carpenter all day and then you come home and you do carpentry, well, you're going to fucking hate carpentry. You have to find that balance and do multiple things.
Yeah, my wife was a ER nurse for a long time.
Oh, God bless her. That's a rough job.
Occasionally. Yeah, very tough. And she had that same, thing that you did, where, when she was on, she was on. And then when she was off, she was luckily, she was one of the lucky ones who was able to totally disconnect from it. But I feel like not everybody is able to do that, right? And if you're in a high stress job and you can't disconnect, they've done studies on like air traffic controllers before, where like the guys that can't unplug, they burn out at a much higher clip than the guys that can, right? So that's key, man. Just like spending time in everyday normal life, just enjoying an ordinary life, like truly, like all this bullshit. Like, okay, we can bring it back to Bitcoin a little bit. Like when I was in the bull market, I was getting, it's funny because the bear market is a time for like gratitude. You look around, you're like, take stock. You're like, man, I have a great family and a great house, great life. The bull market, you're like on Zillow, you're like, this island doesn't even have a runway big enough for my jet. What the fuck, And so during the bull market, I was finding myself, being like, I need stuff. And I wasn't even buying stuff or anything, but it was just, I had this thought ever present that I couldn't get rid of. And just in the bear market, I've just been enjoying just everyday, normal, boring bullshit. So much more than I was like a year ago. And then you realize you're like, oh, this is kind of like a sickness. Like greed is a sickness and it hits you hard, like during those bull cycles. Luckily, like I have this like, this framework where like, I'm kind of immune to fear on the downside. Like fear doesn't bother me that much. I'm pretty comfortable with it, but greed grabs a hold of me, right? On the upside. And I think everybody is one of those two paradigms. So like people are really bad at the top of the cycle, or people are really bad at the bottom of the cycle, right?
I
happen to be bad at the top,
That's a question we definitely want to get to with you. I mean, your namesake is Hodl. You've talked at length about, how much it sucks at the bottom, how exuberant it can be at the top. Yeah. I think it's hard. Well, I mean, it's hard for people on either end of that because the greed takes hold as well. But I think fear is a stronger emotion for most people than greed. So the bottom, like say 15 grand, where we hit, bounced off of, and kind of ruminated around there for a while, that sucked for a lot of people. Yeah. I notice the further I get from my origin here, 2017, 2018 and 19 sucked.
Yeah.
I felt that hard,
Yep.
This last run, it didn't get me nearly as bad. I was able to double down and buy decent chunks at like 15, 16 grand.
Fuck yeah.
Give us some advice for people out there listening who absolutely have a problem about panicking on the bottom. What do you think it is that can give you the gravitas to remain and maybe even buy some more when things are looking real ugly out there?
So, the number one thing is like, just do geographically distributed multisig. Like it should take 48 to 72 hours for you to even access your shit. So if you're panicking and you find yourself on a flight across the country to go, pick up one of your keys and do a signature, maybe you have enough time on the flight to be like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I going to do this? Like, this is stupid. Because the emotions are going to hit really strong every time. I think, sometimes people say, I'm in my Zen, bro. I'm in Bitcoin Zen. And I just never believe it because I know people and people
we saw so many people panic, people that were pretty prominent,
Well, absolutely. And if you say you're in Zen, if you're someone that's volunteering that you're in Zen,
you're not in Zen.
You're clearly not in Zen. Yeah.
Yeah, like you should probably volunteer that you're freaking the fuck out, and actually, I'll believe that you're a little bit calmer. So for me, the feeling I had during the bottom was just like, ugh, like this fucking sucks. But I didn't have a feeling like we're gonna lose it all, man. I'm poor forever. There was none of that. But there was a feeling of like, this is fucking abysmal. Because like it's also all of your, well-laid plans are going to be put to rest by the Bitcoin market. So like, I was very confident we were going to over 100K. I think a lot of people were. We didn't.
Yeah.
And then I was equally confident. I was like, well, if the top wasn't as high, then maybe the bottom won't be as low. And then I was like, probably 30K. The bottom would be like 30K. And then it was crashed through to 16. And, that really shook a lot of people out, man. I mean, it was fucking brutal. I think the thing that was different for me is this time I knew people personally who were getting shaken, and trying to counsel them and console them was just, most people were just totally inconsolable. They're addicted to their fear. The fear like gets real close to you and it talks in your ear and it convinces you that it's correct. And, like, you got to just push past that, and you can't give in to fear. The only thing to fear is fear itself, man. Can't listen to it.
This is going to sound, Dan's going to laugh at me for saying this, but like the Fire Academy, you have to be in pretty physically good shape to do it, but there's some mental things you got to get over. So for me, I'm claustrophobic. I'm claustrophobic, right? So there's a couple of places where you've got to be blind. They put they put you in all your gear, they put a mask over your face, and then you have to go into a hole and find your way through, follow a hose line through all these obstacles blind. A lot of them are so tiny. If you're my size, you can't even get through them with an air pack on. So you have to take this thing off. Now you got to weasel your way through this hole, dragging an air pack with a hose on it, and you're getting wound up in all these things, and you're claustrophobic, and
your breathing's constrained. You're wearing scuba diving gear. Yeah,
exactly. You're freaking out and you have to stop, take some deep breaths, realize if worst case scenario, I'm not going to die here. I know I'm safe. There's people around. Just take some deep breaths. Get yourself together, and then make a plan and activate that plan. And it's that inability to stop and take those deep breaths. You let the panic start really getting you, and then you just circle the drain and you're done. And it feels very similar in these bear markets. When you start seeing these really shitty prices, education is key.
Yeah.
If you understand, okay, nothing is fundamentally broken here. Nothing has really changed. The market psychology is just doing what it does, and I have to take a breath and kind of look around, find out where's the hole, where can I reach through, where can I get my body through, one shoulder at a time. Squeeze my way through. That's the way I kind of view getting through bear markets.
No, totally. I think it's very much the same. And you're the people. Do you know the people who perform best in markets? What type of person performs best in markets?
People with huge testicles.
People who are dead. People who are dead outperform the living.
Dead inside?
They're actually dead.
Dead people know how to hodl.
Dead people outperform the living. So when people die, suddenly their portfolio performance goes up because they're no longer emotional. They're fucking dead. So in some sense, in order to be a good investor, you kind of have to act like you're dead. You kind of have to not listen to any of your emotion. Yeah.
Right.
I always do little mental tricks with myself, talking about Josh, what you were saying, relying on your training, taking it one step at a time, that kind of thing. When the bear market hit this time, I just kept telling myself, I was like, you said you were going to hodl for 10 years. It hasn't been 10 years. So strap in, pussy. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that was basically it. It was simple, but it worked. And I was just like, okay. And that helped me get over the little moment of fear I was experiencing. The greed thing is way harder for me. That's tough, because when the greed hits and, this next cycle, Bitcoin's going to 250K, whatever. It's going to be so bad. You're going to be like, I'm the smartest person that ever lived. Everyone can suck my dick. I'm buying a fucking Ferrari, whatever,
I was just going to ask you. So when the greed hits you, what is it that you want? Is it the Ferrari? Is it what is the thing?
No, it's just this feeling of being right, this feeling that I was right. Because I had, we as Bitcoiners, we have to take a lot of shit. And, you've been telling people about your friends and family have laughed at you about it, the guys at the firehouse, whatever. And, you've been walking this long, lonely path all by yourself, and people have been making fun of you the whole time. And then when it turns out you were right, that feeling is just so intoxicating, right? And you just want to kind of rub it in everyone's face, or at least I do. And that's why it's hard to give up the greed,
Totally get it.
I was going to chime in with a comment on the fear side, and corny as it may be, I'm right there with your analogy, Josh. Like, I would say though, I would caution though, that is not a good impulse if you haven't done the hard work and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So in this case with Bitcoin, like, let's just take us. Josh and I have been interested in economics and markets for over a decade, our entire adult life. We've done a lot of investing. We've fucked things up. We've gotten things right. We discovered Bitcoin after that journey started. We've now spent as many people as exaggerate the number of hours. It is at the thousands of hours now studying Bitcoin. None of the things that could violate the thesis, which could happen. Bitcoin is not inevitable. It's not a guarantee. None of those things have occurred. Everything is still intact. And we've done enough homework to know that the number on the screen shouldn't be enough to divest. But that ability, that ardent commitment to HODL has come through hard work. So I guess I would say to the person that is panicked or whatever, or doesn't feel ready for Bitcoin, or thought it was a great idea and doesn't anymore, the solution, kind of forget what you do with your Bitcoin, although we would encourage you to HODL. Dedicate another 10, 20, 40, 100 hours into studying the protocol and decide for yourself with an open mind whether it's really for you, because maybe it's not. You know what I mean? So yeah, because if you have an XRP maximalist who's like, I said I was going to HODL for 10 years and it's not 10 years. Well, that motherfucker's probably going to get railroaded,
One thing is that also you have to re-examine some of your sacred cows or some of your things that were your non-negotiables, right? So for me, I had one break during the cycle, and it was higher lows. I thought higher lows were like an immutable law of the universe. And I was like, we'll never go back below 20. I mean, that's just like, you can't do it, bro. It's like gravity or something. And then we did. And then I had to reevaluate, and I reevaluated. And I was like, okay, is Bitcoin fundamentally broken, or were you just believing something that was kind of stupid? And then the answer came back, you were believing something that was kind of stupid. You were the one who was wrong. And I was like, okay, so no fundamental violation there. There's no, problem with Bitcoin at core. It's really a bunch of these, shitcoin scams that have proliferated off of the back of the GBTC arb trade and, DeFi, whatever. And,
right.
all this leverage in the system got flushed down the toilet with a bunch of criminal fraudsters like, Sam Bankman-Fried. And that's the thing that's causing the market to dip. And then also we may have new entrants like BlackRock and Fidelity, et cetera, pressing down on the market, attempting to get more coins before, this thing goes and legs up. So for me, it was like just running through all of those thoughts in my mind and getting those thoughts correct and crystallize them was really helpful to just, get the emotions in check, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. This thing has a propensity to test your resolve, and you better have it, or you better just scale back your amount of exposure, because one way or another, you're going to get shaken. It's whether you get tossed off the carousel,
I used to mess with Matt Odell, and I would be like, you don't have to stay humble, Matt, because Bitcoin will humble you no matter what. And now I think I'm wrong. I think you should get humbled before it humbles you, because it's just a much easier path,
As many of you are aware, Dan and I moonlight as paramedics. We see people day in and day out who have one major concern: insurance. They either have no insurance or they have some terrible insurance that doesn't cover a thing, while sticking them with a huge premium. They're worried about the cost of the ambulance, they're worried about the hospital fees, they're worried about the cost of everything. Sometimes they refuse to be transported to the hospital for urgent needed care just because they don't have insurance. This is where Crowd Health comes in. Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's better. You contribute every month to a fund that covers you and assists others in need. If you ever have a significant health issue, you will be crowdfunded. You pay the first $500, and then the community steps in to help you out. Crowd Health will negotiate on your behalf to obtain the best possible price. If you're sick of overpriced and underperforming insurance companies, try Crowd Health. Support humans, not giant health insurance corporations. You can try it out starting at $99 per month if you use code BLUE. That's code BLUE. Have you been paying attention the last few years? If so, you know one thing. Not your keys, not your coins. This is a quaint saying, but it's real. If you're not holding your seed keys, you have a Bitcoin IOU, not Bitcoin. CoinKite is the maker of the Cold Card Mark IV. This is the industry standard for holding the keys to your Bitcoin. Holding your keys should not be intimidating, and it isn't. The Mark IV makes this an incredibly simple process. You could be a degenerate firefighter and hold your own keys. That's how simple it is. If you want to create a more complex setup, the Cold Card Mark IV has you covered there as well. You can create a multi-sig using a cold card, a tap signer, and even the upcoming Q1. Speaking of the Q1, if you want to have every bell and whistle and give yourself no boundaries as far as interacting with Bitcoin is concerned, the Q1 is your signing device. CoinKite makes some of the most sought-after gear in Bitcoin. The block clock, seed plates, the open dime, and the Sats card. Everything you need to secure your Bitcoin. Click on the link in our show notes to get discounts at the CoinKite store or use code BCB for 5% off the Mark IV.
Surround yourself with people that will butcher your sacred cows. Like we know you interact with Carlos Are, so do we. And
dude,
those DMs man. And texts with him, and when he comes on here, as much as that guy can occasionally piss me off, I fucking love him. And he is such a... He's
actually just DM'd me while we were doing this this podcast, and he said if Trump wins, Bitcoin goes to 500K. Trump is tweeting out that the Federal Reserve should cut rates to 0 or less, and then we should refinance the debt. And yeah, if that happens, Bitcoin's going to fucking 500K.
Go Trump!
I just love that guy's deep commitment to adversarial thinking. It's so freaking healthy, and he's as much as his positions can change. Sometimes he doesn't like to admit it, but it's like, bro, I follow. Like, you were here now, but it's his willingness to try out ideas and thoughts. Good thinkers that think well don't commit right to one idea and then because of pride stay with it. Carlos Are is wildly intelligent, thinks the right way, and he's not afraid to change a position.
He's also not afraid to say something very unpopular, which I do respect, because there's a lot of people. I mean, he could probably he could farm probably 3 times the amount of followers he has or whatever. I mean, obviously that's not a metric that matters to him, but for a lot of people it does. He could massively increase his exposure if he just, said nothing but good things and never had any negative thing to say, but he doubles down and he'll say the things that are not popular, and we need those voices. You need to that brings some sobriety to this whole thing.
The thing that makes investing so goddamn difficult is that you not only have to be contrarian, but you have to be right in a big way. And that's really hard to do because, oftentimes, consensus is formed for very good reasons. I mean, there are many things in the world that you're not going to question ever. Like, I don't question how the light switch works. Some fucking nerds figured that out a long time ago. I don't got to think about that shit. It's got something to do with AC, DC. I don't know, man. But that's how it works, right? And so basically it's like, there are so many things that I'm not going to question. And then to question something that's pre-established is a very mentally burdensome and costly exercise. So like thinking from first principles, it takes a long time to re-examine a thought that you've arrived at via consensus or, social consensus. And to re-examine that, then to be right about it, then to place your bet on the correct horse, then to wait the appropriate amount of time before you harvest that bet. That is fucking hard. It's so hard. And I think the reason I'm addicted to it is because it's the most mentally challenging game in the world. People are interested in chess or stuff like that. Investing is the best game ever. And there's a scoreboard that says how much you won. So when you get into a debate with somebody, they can both claim victory, right? This is what happens when me and Joe Carlos Are debate on Clubhouse or whatever. We both claim victory over the debate. But, in investing, there's an actual scoreboard so we can tell who won, right? So it's like, it's the greatest game in the world. And after a certain period of money, you get above like $10 million. Money doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, listen, man, all the fancy shit is bullshit. Like, the best thing in the world is just going to the bar with your friends and paying for drinks. Like, you pick up the tab and you have great people around you and you just talk shit. That's the best thing in the world. It's very cheap. It only costs a couple $100 to do that. So after you get above a certain point, you're into the game for the game itself. And I happen to love the fucking game, and it takes up almost all of my brain cycles that don't go to family, go to thinking about the world and the way in which the world might be wrong, and I can profit from that. And I fucking love that.
You can see those people in the world that are just into the game. Like, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, he could have sold Facebook in like 2009 for $1 billion, pieced out, never done a thing again in his life. And a lot of people would say, why didn't he do that? He could just be hanging out on a beach, but he clearly wants to be in the game. He's in the game of building this Facebook empire, Meta empire. And then Warren Buffett is another great example of that. The guy has been literally living like a miser to be, he's 90 years old, worth billions of dollars, lives in the same ranch in Omaha. He just enjoys the game.
Yeah,
no matter how much you dislike him.
Jeffrey Dahmer, he loved the game too. Dude. You know,
dude, there are good games and bad games.
There's different games, you know?
There's different games. You know, there's this clip of Warren, I think it was on like 60 Minutes or something, CNBC, wherever it was. And he's going through the McDonald's drive-thru. And he does this every morning. He gets breakfast at McDonald's. And Warren is
not dead.
Right, I know, right? Warren is worth $80 billion or something at this point. And he says that when the market is down, he gets a sausage biscuit. When the market is up, he gets a sausage muffin with egg, right? And there's a price difference between the two. And the price difference is like 47 cents. And you watch that and you think, this man is insane. He's truly insane. He's a billionaire. The 47 cents means nothing. And then you go through your first Bitcoin bear market and you go, you know what? I fucking get it. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do that too.
For sure. Hodl, one thing I want to pick your brain on, especially given the period of your life, adding a child to the fold, and man, your house has to be insane. You talked a little bit about this with Peter, and I want to get back into it because I think it's top of mind for both of us. We each have a couple kids. Yeah. If we're right, let's play out the greed scenario where holy fuck, we're right. Okay. Oh my God. Whatever. We weren't just right. We were really right. And a lot of Bitcoiners, many people that are listening, stumble randomly into more wealth than they thought they would ever have. Something my wife and I talk about a lot, regardless of the scenario, because I hope even if Bitcoin doesn't succeed, we've accumulated enough wealth to pass some on to the next generation. How the fuck is this properly done? Because back to kids living in their parents' basement playing Xboxes, man, are there a lot of unmotivated, undriven young people out there who have poor incentives and much too voluptuous of a teat right in front of their mouth, and they just won't stop suckling. How do we avoid this? What have you thought through in this regard?
Well, I think a lot of thoughts in popular culture are actually just psyops that are trying to prevent dynastic wealth, right? So like, you know, you often hear, especially baby boomers, say things like, rich baby boomers, they'll say things like, you know, I'm not leaving anything to my children. They didn't deserve it or earn it or whatever. And it's like, I have a buddy who has 4 kids, and he says, what if each of my 4 kids have 4 kids? And that's 16 people that I got to take care of, right? And that's sort of the manner in which I think. And it's also like, you know, everybody in my lineage up until me was basically, you know, some variety of European peasant, right? And so I may be the only person to ever figure some shit out or be at the right moment in history in order to actually make some wealth. So no, I definitely do plan to leave it all to my children, and they're going to be the stewards of my wealth. And, you know, the manner in which you make sure that wealth doesn't get squandered over time is, you know, you have to talk to your children very early about money, about wealth, about how things work, about how the world works. You have to get them thinking like you. I mean, I think the greatest gift you can give your kids is knowing about compound interest early in life. So if you can teach your kids about compound interest by the time they're 11 or 12 years old, they have a massive head start. And that's without you even leaving them any money, right? Because if they start compounding at like, say, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, whenever, any time in there, and they make it until their 80s, that's, you know, deca millions just off of doing very regular things like putting away your money from your summer job, right? And then you sort of subsidy the entire endeavor where you just backstop everything. So like for me, I'm planning on making the kids all get jobs when they're in high school, even though they don't need to get jobs because obviously we have enough money or whatever. And then when they do get jobs, I'm going to tell them that every dollar of their job is going into an investment account, and that I will match whatever dollar of their job that they made, and they can use that for spending on random bullshit, you know, whatever it is, the crap we think is important when we're 16 or 17 years old. Right. And, you know, I'm going to backstop that for them. If they want a car, I'm going to tell them, you know, save up and I'll pay whatever you pay, I'll double, you know, and just teach them along the way. And then I think at some point, I think it's important to give control to your children early, so that you can watch over things. So you might want to, instead of waiting until you're 70, 80 years old to give control, you might want to give control up in your 50s, and then you fuck off and go fishing, and you just watch over things, and you go, and you become like a a beacon for advice for them. And that's much more of a old school mentality on how to deal with wealth rather than this new modern phenomenon of like, I'm going to give it all to charity because my children are ungrateful or whatever.
Yeah.
That's stupid. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Or you could become a giant pain in the ass. I mean, Josh, picture like Hodl at 67 just fucking fishing all day in your ear telling you what you're supposed to do when you're 18, 19. Fuck that.
Great.
There's a lot of good new apps too. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. It's called not Mint. It's Greenlight. We pay my kids like their allowance with this app called Greenlight. They get a little debit card to use, and then they can also invest with it. So I was explaining to my 9-year-old daughter. She was asking me, so she's like, you just get free money if I put my money, in Apple or some other company that you can buy on Greenlight. I was like, no, it's not free money. There's risk. You could lose money. It could go down. So I had this whole conversation explaining how investment works, and shares of companies and all this. And I'm not sure it really landed completely yet, but I'm trying to get this like ideation going in her head that there's somewhere I can put my money without pissing it away on candy at the candy store, and it's going to make more money. And I think we're 6 months away from her actually understanding that, but trying to get that thought process started.
This also comes down to the marshmallow test too, and you being a good steady state parent for them, because the kids that are from impoverished backgrounds who fail the marshmallow test, they're from environments in which they know the second marshmallow to be a lie. So if the second marshmallow is a lie, then the most rational action is to take the first marshmallow. And so if you're a steady parent and you do the right things and, you let compounding work for you, and you've made the family prosperous because of the diligence and the discipline that you had, they're going to see that and go, oh shit, this thing works. It's not a lie. But every time you tell somebody about compounding, or you say Bitcoin's going to 1 million or whatever, people hear it. And if they're from a background where they know that people are, hoodwinking them, they essentially just go, this guy's fucking scamming me. He's lying to me. This is bullshit. I'm not going to listen. Right. So I think you being the example is incredibly important.
Well said. What are your thoughts on, let's do some fresh Bitcoin chatter. What are your thoughts on this whole Drivechain thing? We've done a kind of a deep dive the last week. We'll be completely honest. When I look into this technical stuff, I realize how little I know fucking nothing. Like, I was reading Shinobi articles on Drivechain, and I'm like,
so dense, man.
Motherfucker, I have no clue. By the way, Josh, we need to get Shinobi on here. But yes, I think I've got a high level grasp. Shout out to Chris Alamo too. I don't know if you know him, but we basically texted him yesterday and said, dude, we're a little confused. We've each read a few articles. We've heard all the bullshit on Twitter. Summarize this for a couple boneheaded firemen, and god damn it, did he do a marvelous job. What's your thoughts?
I can break down some of my thoughts on it. I'm neutral to slight negative on Drivechains, and I'm fighting to maintain that position, honestly, because I feel like the marketing effort on Twitter is pushing me further negative, but I'm trying to maintain an open mind. I think that Drivechains are one of a suite of possible scaling technologies, and if you want a really simple and dumb explanation, it's just Drivechains is scaling blockchains with other blockchains. It's using a block. Yo, dog, you like blockchains? I'll put a blockchain inside your blockchain. That's what Drivechains are, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I think to myself, is that the best scaling solution versus other possible scaling solutions? Is it something that's needed? Because a lot of the core, I think, Drivechain argument hinges on the hypothetical that a fee market is not going to develop, a robust enough fee market is not going to develop to continue Bitcoin's security into the future. And I think that's a conversation that some people say it's 100 years out. I think it's much more like 10 or 15 years out, because we're going to start to know much earlier if the fees are replacing the subsidy. So to me, it's like the conversation is premature, number one. It has to compete with other scaling technologies, number two. It's not in production anywhere, number three. Like, I'd like to see it on Litecoin or something so we can actually know, because you can't really test a blockchain-based system without incentives. So if there are no incentives and you're just in a test environment, no actual money on the line, how do you actually know that it works as purported, right? So
and that there's no
those
and
are
then like with Taproot, we had these ordinals that kind of surprised everyone, came out of nowhere. Whenever you're doing any kind of change to the fundamentals here, there's always potential unforeseen circumstances, or we don't want to shit where we eat. We want to make sure we shit on Litecoin and let them sort this all out before we don't want to fuck up Bitcoin.
Well, it's
what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's just good to test in production. I mean, it's really good to have a working model for something. I think of Bitcoin. Okay, so Bitcoin engineering culture takes its roots from civil engineering culture, right? But instead of making a bridge, it's something much more akin to like the ISS, right? And if you're going to add new modules to the International Space Station, well, guess what? That's really complicated. It takes a lot of critical consensus that's across the entire globe. You're going to have to fight for decades to get something added. And you have to, have a really good reason. You have to have backers who are actually willing to put this thing in space. That's that's basically like where we're at with Bitcoin culture, because if this is going to be the global reserve currency, that's the level of engineering prowess that's needed and the sort of adversarial mindset that's needed, because you can't move fast and break things in Bitcoin. That's what Ethereum does. And guess what? They broke fucking everything, because Ethereum 1 doesn't even exist anymore. Now we have Ethereum 2. So yeah, you have to think adversarially. Bitcoin's engineering culture is not fair. It's not nice. It's very adversarial. It's extremely hard to deal with. And that's just a self-selecting mechanism, in my opinion. Now, I say this as somebody who's not a core dev, and I'm sure that, the friends of mine who are core devs have a lot of problems with what I just said. But from the outside, I think that rough, murky consensus is the way to go, and we should let people battle it out in the arena, if their ideas are going to be valid or not, right? And also, there's also this thing about, like Jeremy was pushing heavy for OpsCTV, and then he kind of stopped pushing for it, and then people found a renewed interest for OpsCTV. So it's almost
interesting.
It's almost like the person who comes up with the proposal can't be the proponent that pushes it across the line. Like, it has to find broader appeal in the wider community. And if it doesn't find that broader appeal, or if it doesn't find a second champion, then it's sort of like deemed to be automatic bullshit,
Totally. Yeah. Back to like the moving slow and not breaking anything. It's like, if you're suggesting a change to the nuclear silo, all the people are going to be like, motherfucker, get out of here, right? But then maybe it marinates over time and they realize it's a good idea. And there's been such heavy-handed pushing of this, and pushing with a suggestion that if this doesn't happen, Bitcoin's fucked. I think that's what a lot of people are averse to, is people stepping in the ring and saying, you guys need to do this new idea that I came up with, and if you don't, Bitcoin's fucked. And I think a lot of people are just sticking their middle finger up saying, go fuck yourself. Yeah. And you're right. I kind of like you, I was on drivechain.info listening to however you pronounce his last name, kind of Storts and the other dude. And they have a lot of good highlights there about the advantages. Like, so weighing this out objectively, not just latching on to quick blurbs on Twitter of people that think it's a terrible idea. Are you able to articulate the downsides very well, Hodl? Like, what are the risks here, especially in the mining space, for potentially going this route with scaling?
I think somebody else would be better suited to talk about, the mining incentive changes. But for me, I think one of the biggest downsides that I'm able to talk about is, the regulatory risk, because you increase the regulatory attack surface of Bitcoin by like 256x, because there are 256 slots for Drivechain, right? So like Bitcoin, here's a fun fact: Bitcoin is 100% legal and always has been, right? There's a reason that Satoshi picked ECDSA instead of Schnorr, and it's because Schnorr was under patent protection. So Satoshi was smart enough to not do things that were outright illegal, right? To give the project the best shot. And people say, well, you're fully cucked. You should do things that are illegal because reasons. And it's like, what if we can do things that aren't illegal that also achieve the same desired effect and outcome? That's what I'd like to do. That sounds like the better thing to do, right? And so for me, I worry about the regulatory attack environment. I think that, Congress, the SEC, Treasury have made it clear, like, they're not big fans of shitcoins. They're not big fans of, they're not big fans of stable coins, especially. They're certainly no fan of Bitcoin. I mean, that's true, but there's also nothing they can do about Bitcoin because, like it or not, Bitcoin is legal. It's always been,
So if there are 256 slots, how do they decide, or how is it decided who gets those slots? Because I'm sure there's going to be 10,000 shitcoins that would like to have this ability to be locked into or just even the marketing standpoint for them. Like, we're more secure, we're on Bitcoin.
That's another complexity layer, which is the miners have to activate the next slot, like whoever's the next in the 256 bit, and there has to be like a campaign for activation. So there's like all these basically campaigns for all the different shitcoins to get added, and they campaign via the miners, right? And so to me, when you ask the Drivechain proponents, you say, well, okay, so there's 256 slots. What are some of the, benefits, or what are some of the beneficial technologies that are from shitcoin land that we can put on Bitcoin or that you would want on Bitcoin? And they say things like privacy, and you're like, okay, I'll grant you privacy, fine. Even though there's a lot of things we could quibble with about that, about how big the anon set is and all sorts of other things, auditability, et cetera, et cetera. And then they go, big blocks. And you go, okay, well, that's it? You got two things and one of them is big blocks? Like, it doesn't seem like there are 256 technologies that are all bidding to be on Bitcoin. And then you also have the problem of the main reason that people are using altcoins is not because they're daily active users of altcoins or monthly active users of altcoins even. It's because these people are gambling and speculating and, dumping illegal securities on the general public. I mean, it's an absolute den of thieves, and that's why people are doing it. So if you take the seigniorage right away from them, why would they bring their technology to Bitcoin? It doesn't make any sense, in my opinion.
And the other problem...
Also, here's the other thing, real quick. There's not a market demand for sidechains. We have a sidechain. It's called Liquid.
Yeah, Liquid's been dead.
There's nothing stopping other people from putting other sidechains on Bitcoin without Drivechains. You don't need Drivechains to have sidechains. Drivechains are a merge mining consensus mechanism, right? You can do sidechains that are not merge mined today. And guess what? No one fucking uses them. No one uses Liquid. Nobody has any interest in putting any other sidechains on Bitcoin. And everybody in the crypto ecosystem is happy with their own dysfunctional coin that doesn't work anyway. They don't care. They're just here to make money. They're just here to gamble.
Yeah. The other component, and Alamo brought this up in this text we had with him, was NVK talking about what he calls soft fork hell, where basically you soft fork to accommodate, and then those that you accommodate, well, no, we need more. We need this thing. And now you're soft forking again, and you get into this kind of merry-go-round that doesn't fully stop. And it's like, should we even have pushed it in the first place?
Well, and it's like, hey, dude, there's an attack on slot number 176, but when slot 176 doesn't have enough economic activity to get anybody interested in stopping the attack. So it's like, okay, well, we're just going to let the attack go through, and then all the 176ers are like, how could you do this to me? You fucked up my chain. And then they take 176 off of Bitcoin and they go do it again in shitcoin land. It's like, it's kind of this perpetual clown show, I think. And listen, if we have to use Drivechains to scale Bitcoin circa 2045, 2050, then so be it. Like, we can do that. But there's so much design space open for potential scaling solutions ahead of that fee crisis, if it ever does materialize, that pushing Drivechains now is nonsense, in my opinion. And then also, just to be fair to the Drivechain guys, I think premature ossification is nonsense also. So I think the guys who are saying Bitcoin should never change, I think that's stupid. The correct way to think about Bitcoin is as an evolutionary system with its roots in civil engineering culture and a very adversarial environment. If you want to build a bridge or a skyscraper or a space station, you have to make sure that bridge doesn't fall down, the skyscraper doesn't collapse, and the space station stays in orbit, right? Those are very important things. And it's the same with Bitcoin. You can't break the global reserve currency.
Yeah. Folks, when a fellow firefighter, family member, or friend asks us where we buy Bitcoin, we point them to Swan. It's the place Josh and I have dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin for years. At Swan Bitcoin, you can set up automated Bitcoin savings plans as well as execute instant purchases. They serve clients of any size, from firefighters to institutional investors, and an account is startlingly easy to set up. I've watched a fireman do it on a smartphone while sitting in a recliner in less than 7 minutes. Swan also offers Bitcoin IRAs. You can start or roll over a traditional or Roth IRA with enterprise-grade custody, attentive service, easy onboarding, and transparent fees. Lastly, Swan will be hosting the Pacific Bitcoin Festival October 5th through 6th in Los Angeles this year. The two of us will be attending and speaking. Come join us. Visit pacificbitcoin.com for tickets and visit swan.com for details on everything that Swan offers. Ladies and gents, the fact is that Bitcoin remains decentralized because its ledger is distributed all across the globe. The thousands of computers that keep track of who owns what and ensure the accuracy of the Bitcoin blockchain are the nodes. You ought to be verifying your own transactions and balances, as well as enforcing the consensus rules yourself. The software and hardware we use to run Bitcoin nodes is StartOS by Start9 Labs. With StartOS, you can fire up a full Bitcoin node in a very easy plug-and-play fashion, but you can also do way more. Start9 gives you optional capabilities to run a full-blown private server, allowing you to easily and incrementally level up and opt out of today's increasingly centralized and alarmingly censored cloud computing model. Just as Windows and Mac OS made it possible for anyone to run their own personal computer, StartOS makes it possible for anyone to have their own personal server. Run a Bitcoin node, run a Lightning node, run a NOSTR relay, control your own photos, videos, and messages, and much more. Check it all out at start9.com. The other thing I was going to chime in with, and I think this is helpful for people that haven't dove whatsoever into the technical side of Bitcoin and are just kind of buying the message that it's perfect, nothing can be upgraded. That's in there, that hook's in their mouth. Bitcoin is still a wildly human protocol, right? Consensus improvement are done in a messy, often murky, adversarial fashion. And this is a risk, you could say, for Bitcoin. It's also a beauty of Bitcoin. It's not some pristine, untouchable, perfect thing. It's got a ton of fingers all over it. And when you see these topics debated, that realization sort of hits you anew, and I think a healthy way. It's this thing, we're still pretty early on, guys. There's a lot unproven. There's a lot unknown. There are things that are probably going to and potentially need to change. And when you see this debated, you realize this thing could go in a direction that I don't love, whichever way you're on, the side that you're on with this.
These incentives are arguably one of the most important things in Bitcoin. If you are going to fuck with these incentives, you could very easily, if you don't take very careful steps and move very, very slowly and deliberately, you could fucking blow this whole thing up pretty easily by fucking up the incentive structure. So, as you said, Hodl, like waiting out this thing, like let's say 10 years from now, the incentive structure is fucked because the miners aren't collecting enough fees. Well, this is something that can be revisited. It doesn't mean that just because we don't do it now, it's not possible to do it in the future. This thing's ossified and it can't be changed. It can always be changed, and there's proposals all the time. As Dan said, though, the thing that does worry me is the force with which people seem to be pushing this right now. And maybe it's just the flavor of the month. We seem to have that. Ordinals was that 6 months ago. This is it at the moment. 6 months from now, we might be arguing about something else completely and have forgotten about this altogether.
Yeah.
But it is a consideration, especially when you read the Shinobi article from my position or Dan's, and you're like, holy shit, like there's a lot of this is above my head. I don't really understand what the fuck is going on here. So it warrants more consideration for me before I would, I'm not going to rubber stamp this at all and say I understand it, number one, very well. And number two, it's something that just because someone in Bitcoin who knows more technically than you about how this works, you shouldn't just take their word for it. You need to at least do your best to understand this stuff fundamentally.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's very important to dig in. You should listen to Bitcoin.review, which is a Bitcoin technical podcast.
Great pod.
I listened
also
to that.
Humbling to listen to. You're like, fucking hey.
I listened to it attempting to do osmosis on it, where I just absorb the information, but none of it actually gets in. But it puts me to sleep. It's a great sleepy time podcast. So I think if I listen to it in my dreams, eventually something will leach in, subconsciously.
I've done that with Odell's podcast. Like he has some technical dude on once in a while. I'll be like, all right, I'm going to do this. Have no idea what they're talking about for like 30 minutes at a time, but I'm like, somehow I will absorb this. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Drivechains are the Drivechain conversation is premature. The Drivechain guys only have like $2 or $3 million to push this thing. So and honestly, the marketing effort is low key, pretty cringe. So it's not going well at the moment. So I wouldn't be overly concerned if I was you. I think it'd be nicer to me if we were having a much more productive conversation around CTV and covenants, generally. I think that was a better conversation that was happening before Drivechain sucked all the air out of the room. But yeah, in general, I do agree with what you said about it being very human still in terms of upgrades. And I think that, unfortunately, if you're one of the devs, like everybody has to be treated as an adversary, even if you're the person who's the biggest savior of Bitcoin in the world.
Yes.
We have to treat you as if you are a state actor coming in here to destroy Bitcoin, or a hostile foreign power coming in here to destroy Bitcoin. We have to treat you that way. I mean, that's just how the system has to be because of this rough, murky consensus. And, maybe we get to this Mexican standoff with Bitcoin development where like we got guns pointed at each other's head and nothing ever gets done ever again. And probably that is the correct way to ossify. It's not like we're going to declare today, like, or, you know, someday in the future, ossification day and plant a flag in the ground. No, it'll just be a Mexican standoff. And then we'll never make an upgrade again. And then at some point there will be a, you know, second, third generation, like move to upgrade. And people will be like, well, why do you want to upgrade? And why do you want to do this? And, you know, all of the conversations that we had as like the forebearers of this technology will come back to haunt us. And then our descendants will have to fight it out. I mean, this is a 1,000-year project, right? So like, who are we to, you know, just because you're here now at this point in time doesn't mean that you are the arbiter of all things Bitcoin. There might be, and there probably will be, people in the future who are a lot smarter than us and have better ideas for this system, right? There will also be charlatans in the future who want to change things prematurely or without good reason. And, you know, I think that I'm teaching my children to stone those people to death. No, I'm kidding.
We need to shun the false prophets.
Bring back stoning.
Yeah,
exactly.
Stoning is a punishment we have to bring back. It's a good old school punishment.
Straight medieval.
Yeah.
What does actually worry you? This might be a good way to round up. Yeah, like how do we fuck this up? How does this wonderful, pristine gift we've been given unwind in a negative way? Like what actually worries you?
I think Greg Maxwell had a post probably 4 years ago about apathy in Bitcoin, and a lot of people took that to heart. And you know, I think I took that to heart as well. And I think apathy is one of the big problems in Bitcoin. So you know, it's kind of like the if I was to analogize it, the Ben Franklin quote of like the cost of liberty is like constant vigilance. It's something like that. And so I think that, you know, yeah, the cost of, you know, Bitcoin is constant vigilance, and you can't get apathetic about it at any point in the time. And if we have at any point in the future, and if we do have too many people who are apathetic, the system probably will collapse at some point. And I think that's actually a problem for our children and grandchildren to face. I don't think it's a problem for us to face. So yeah, in general, I'm not that concerned with Bitcoin. I'm trying to think of like other potential concerns. I'm concerned that Bitcoin holders may have to go through a period of extreme scrutiny, right? So like, you know, they didn't
cavity searches. Yeah, things could get uncomfortable.
I mean, there's a million different ways things could go. I mean, like let's say like if the dollar actually hyperinflates, and you're one of the people that has you know, millions and millions of dollars in Bitcoin, right? Or billions of dollars because the dollar is hyperinflating. People aren't going to feel that chill about it. You know, people are going to feel like you were part of the reason why it collapsed, right? And so I think making it through that time period sort of unscathed, and also like, I mean, going back to the mental health crisis and the worsening politics that we have in this country, you could see very bad ideas come to the forefront, you know. You could see Bitcoin confiscation. You could see a lot of these things. And so, you know, I think a wealth tax is probably on the horizon. So that's something that we'll all have to gird against in one way, shape, or form. Like, you know, anybody who has over $50 million is getting hit with a wealth tax. And you're sitting in 2023 thinking like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't have $50 million, right? But what happens when hyperinflation comes to America, or what happens if hyperinflation comes to America and suddenly a loaf of bread is worth $50 million and then everybody is subject to the wealth tax? Yeah, that's not good. I mean, it's sort of like the dragnet that is, you know, the $10,000 that you pull out of when you pull out of a bank. 10,000 when they put that law in place, $10,000 was actually a fair amount of money. Today,
never changed though.
Yeah, you can pull 10 grand out to, you know, go fuck around on vacation, and it's really not that much money. You know, pretty good vacation, but it's not like a crazy amount of money anymore.
Right. Well, do you ever consider that when it comes to like storing your Bitcoin? Do you fear at all that collaborative custody might not be such a great idea because of the scenario you just outlined? Like you have some purveyor, somebody out there who's holding a key who can confirm having XPubs that you have X amount of Bitcoin. But then if you really think it through, if you're buying from a mainstream exchange, they're going to know it either way, but they just have no ability to, you know, arm wrestle some custodian out there for one of your keys potentially.
Yeah. I mean,
how do you think through that?
Here's how I think through it is that number one, you're all on a list. Okay. There's a little line item. It says Dan, this amount of Bitcoin, Josh, this amount of Bitcoin. They know how many Bitcoin you have, right? Especially if you were picking up all of your Bitcoin from KYC exchanges. Like it's known, right? So like on the privacy tip, I think that in general, we're going to move into a world with enhanced security. And I hope there are privacy improvements that are going to follow suit, because you're right, we may dox a little bit of privacy along the way. But, you know, for instance, I think collaborative custody has like 100x improvement coming in the near term. with, social recovery, hierarchical multi-sigs, mini script enabled, wallets, covenants, staging areas for hot and cold Bitcoin. Like, we can and should make Bitcoin a lot easier to custody. And once we do make Bitcoin a lot easier to custody from the security side, we can have more people who are in control of their own keys. And once you have more people who are, controlling Bitcoin, two things happen. Number one, you become a more powerful political voting bloc, right? So you can say like, hey, my grandmother controls her keys. Like, how are you going to do this to her, right? And number two is you basically stop the rehypothecation games that Wall Street is able to play. So the more Bitcoin in self-custody, the less paper Bitcoin there will be in the system. The less paper Bitcoin in the system, the higher the price of Bitcoin goes. And yeah, so to me, self-custody is the whole game. I think we need to get as many people on self-custody as humanly possible. Sometimes I think about the issuance schedule and how fast it was. And I think that was a absolute masterstroke by Satoshi to get the coins out there, get them into the hands of people that understood the system, who are able to take control of their own keys and secure them. But I also think we have to worry about the last 2-3 million coins, because those people are an important bulwark politically for Bitcoin. And we need to make, custody technologies easier for them. So I do think that collaborative custody is going to be the norm. And I think that the way that we do collaborative custody today is asinine and fucking ass backwards. It's entirely stupid. No offense to Casa or Unchained or anybody else who's doing collaborative custody, but the fact that you're in control of all of your keys is retrograde. It doesn't make sense. You should be in control of the most powerful key. And then if there's a problem, everything should revert back to that key. So you can actually, like, using Miniscript, you can take a multisig and you can, first of all, you can take the multisig and split it apart. So like, key 2 is actually a 2 of 3. Key 3 is actually a 2 of 3. Key 1 is a 3 of 5. So this can actually the entire hierarchical system here in the circle can collapse back down to key 1, which is your own personal 3 of 5 that you're securing. But up here is a social layer with trusted institutions or trusted peers or intermediaries. And I think that collapsing function where we can go back down to single keys in the event there's an insolvency or a problem or a hack or a whatever, that's the core function here. So like the other day I said we're in the dark ages with hardware wallets and seed plates. And what I meant is that this is not enough security. We're probably still going to have hardware wallets and seed plates going into the future, but they're going to be more widely distributed across the globe. It'll be easier to access, and you'll be using trusted signers in a sort of social collaborative model. I think that's the way forward for the last 2 or 3 million coins. And that said, if you want to be totally cypherpunk and off grid and, everything is proprietary and it's your own node and, you compiled the code yourself, more power to you. I think that's fucking awesome. And like, we should always, keep the cypherpunk in mind, but you have to have compassion for, the additional 350 million people in America and the rest of the people in the world who have no idea any of the cypherpunk ideas, values, skill sets. I mean, it's like a complicated skill actually to learn to control your private keys by yourself. Storing cryptographic secrets is not something that human beings have had a lot of experience with. In fact, secret keeping in general is actually very poor and misunderstood by human beings. I mean, basically everybody will just blurt out to you whatever it is, or people still sticky note their password on their computer.
There's no secrets at the firehouse. I could tell you that.
Yeah, I do think because of AI though, it's another area I'm bullish on. Is because of AI, we're going to be using hardware encryption keys. Basically, like everybody will be using a hardware encryption key, like the equivalent of a YubiKey, because you're going to need to real world authenticate with a physical device, because there will be so many fake human beings. I mean, we now live in a world in which it's possible for the fake Dan and the fake Josh to sound exactly like you, and for them to have a wide enough data set on your personality that actually they say things that you would say. And then, you call up your wife or whoever and you're like, I'm in trouble, man. I was kidnapped. This thing happened. Meanwhile, you're just at the firehouse fucking around. And so your wife in the future is going to be like, hey, I need this. I need the encryption key. And if you're not going to sign with the encryption key, then I know I'm not talking to Dan or Josh. So fuck off.
Right. Yeah. Oh, no, all great points. Josh, we need to create the AI wise sage Hodl. So like we need to create the fucking off
when the price is way down. Price is down 80%. I got to talk to Hodl real quick.
Like, hey, man,
AI fired up.
Bitch. No. By the way, my advice is very simple. It's just stop being a fucking pussy.
That'll be the name of this episode. Stop being a fucking pussy.
It's how I talk to you guys. It's how I talk to everybody.
Man, would you fit well in the firehouse, Hodl? God. Missed calling, dude. I hope reincarnation's real. I hope you come back. And
I thought they weren't letting white guys in anymore, and then I see you two fuckers, and like,
dude, it depends on the area. We won't get too deep on this. We have a lot of paranoia, by the way. You can envision our side of things, like as public servants. We're like,
you don't need to say anything. Yeah, you don't need to say anything. I'm ever in a fire. I weigh 230 pounds. I would like a dude who can pick me up and actually take me out of the fire. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I will say this about the fires.
Be trans, that's okay with me, as long as he's a biological male. You know,
we'll be looking for seed plates before we look for you, though. I can tell you that much.
Fuck yeah! If your house is on fire, we're taking your shit.
Don't keep any Bitcoin shit at your house.
Great advice. Great advice. Yeah. I feel like the fire service to this point has stayed more immune than I would expect to the frills. Like, there are still in our state, in our area, very hard lines. Like, you have to pass this certain physical test. Yeah, it doesn't fucking matter what color you are, what you have, what genitalia you have. If you can't pass this thing, you're not getting in. And a lot of that is whittled away in other physical professions. I certainly hope that never happens to firefighting, because at the end of the day, you got to pick up heavy shit. You got to be really hot. You got to be fit. And there's exceptions to that rule, but we can't compromise too much, because
what is the in the physical? I would love to know, in the physical test, what is the thing that weeds out the most people?
It starts out, you're on like a treadmill stair stepper with like 80 pounds on you, and you have what is it, like 5 minutes of that, and then
I think so. So they fatigue you in the beginning, so you're pretty roasted coming off this treadmill. Like, it doesn't sound like that much, but actually that weighted stair step is a big thing. I've heard, Josh, that people fatigue out at the dummy drag. There's two stations I think people get fucked up on. One is there's this hammer station where you have to hit a piston, and you actually have to hit it. It's this device they have. You actually have to, the more square you hit it, the more it moves, which is actually a really good test for firefighting, because you have to be able to swing tools and hit things. So if you hit it way off center, it doesn't budge at all. If you hit it right on the nose, it moves. Some people that can't swing tools fuck up that station. And then I think fatigue wise, a lot of people get shit canned on those.
It's like a 200-pound dummy you got to drag around, which, I mean, it's a lot. And it's dead weight, just like a person would be. Then it's carrying some tools around, and then I think a pike pole. You have to push this weighted simulated ceiling up and pull it down with a pike pole a bunch of times. It's been a while, though, since I've done it, so
it would be fun to do it again. It's basically like a balls to the wall, like 12, I forget how many minutes it is, but like 12-minute circuit with a bunch of weight on.
This would be great content for you guys, as you both redo it and compete on time.
And we both don't pass it, Josh.
I bet you, that'd be hilarious. We just don't post it. It's simple. You just don't post it,
Yeah. That'd be gold content.
Hodl, we got to let you go, man. This has been a fucking blast.
Gentlemen, we
really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, we will. We'll see. I'm sure we'll see you at a conference here coming up. We're limited. We have actual real lives. So unlike some of these Bitcoin losers that go to fucking 16 conferences a year, we actually have shit going on. But we'll be in. Are you
a conference unless you have one Bitcoin? If you don't have one Bitcoin,
don't show up.
At any fucking conference.
Good advice. Yeah, focus on your first Bitcoin.
Get your fucking Bitcoin first. Then maybe. Really, you should have like 3 Bitcoin before you go to a conference. But like, let's focus on one. Okay.
Get to one. Get that whole coin,
for
folks.
Sure.
Hodl, congrats again on the new kid.
Thanks, brother.
And we appreciate you, man.
Cool. It was great to be here, guys. Love the pod.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.